Hello, everyone, and welcome to this special virtual conference series. I'm Jami Ramberan, a professor of film and television at Howard University, and I'm thrilled to be your moderator as we explore the making of one of the most anticipated films of the year. That's right, Sinners. Sinners is written and directed by the visionary Ryan Coogler. You'll know him for his work on Black Panther and Creed, and starring the talented Michael B. Jordan. Sinners is a genre-defined supernatural action thriller that blends elements of horror, action, and psychological tension into a unique cinematic experience. Today, we're joined by producer Sev Ohanian and executive producer Rebecca Cho, who helped bring this epic project to life. Trust me, you're going to want to hear this. Let me first start by introducing our incredible guest. Okay, I'll start with Sev. Sev is an Armenian-American screenwriter and producer and the founder of Proximity Media alongside Ryan and Zinzi Coogler. He first met Ryan while they were at film school at USC and co-produced Ryan's debut film, Fruitvale Station, right after graduation. Sev's credits include producing the hit film Searching, which grossed $75 million worldwide, as well as co-writing and producing its sequel, Missing, and the Hulu sensation Run. He's also an executive producer on Judas and the Black Messiah, which won 2 Academy Awards and was nominated for 6, including Best Picture. His upcoming projects include executive producing the Marvel Studios series Ironheart and Eyes of Wakanda. In 2021, he was named one of Hollywood Reporter's 35 under 35. Next up, we have Rebecca Cho. Rebecca is the Senior Vice President and Head of Film at Proximity Media, where she has played a vital role in developing and overseeing numerous high-profile projects, including the entitled Prince Jukebox Musical, A Vicious Circle at Universal Studios, and California Bear at 20th Century Studios. She currently serves as an executive producer on Sinners, which we will dive into, directed by Ryan Coogler. Prior to joining Proximity, Rebecca worked at Warner Brothers Pictures, contributing to critically acclaimed films like Judas and the Black Messiah and King Richard. She started her career at Fox 2000 and ABC Studios, laying the foundation for a remarkable journey in the film industry. Okay. So before we dive in, just a quick reminder that this is a special opportunity to hear from 2 of the brilliant minds behind Sinners. As we get into the conversation, feel free to drop your questions in the chat, whether you're curious about the film's production, behind the scenes details, or advice for aspiring filmmakers. This is your chance to ask it all. So don't be shy, send those questions our way, and we'll try to get to as many as we can later, all right. Later on. All right, so let's jump in. Thank you both so much for joining us today. We're excited to get an inside look at the making of Sinners. I'm going to start with Rebecca. Sinners blends supernatural horror, action, thriller, and psychological elements in a truly unique way. As the executive producer, how did you help support Ryan Coogler's vision of crafting a story that pushes genre boundaries and intertwines such diverse layers?
I think all of us, when Ryan pitched the movie for the first time, were just immediately in on the vision. He's such a singular filmmaker, one of very few that we have um, living and working today. And I think we were all just so excited when he shared the inspiration behind this movie. And I remember it was dinner in October of 2023 that we all sat down and he told us he was going to sit down and write the script. And in a couple months, around Christmas time, we got the first draft and it was just an excellent, excellent draft. And it felt like all of us were ready to go. Myself, Sev, Zinzi, all of us put our heads together to figure out the best way to put this together. And that was, pulling together a casting director early on because we knew that finding our Sammy was going to be a challenge. Bringing online a line producer to help us put the budget together and build the building blocks of the movie before we ever exposed it to the marketplace and the world. And we turned this movie around very, very quickly. We're about to release it 15 months since our first dinner talking about this movie, which is not a normal turnaround for
Not at
movies.
all.
All. So, it was all of us putting our 200% of our energy and effort into it. And that's because we all just immediately believed in the unique vision that Ryan had for this movie.
Okay. Yeah, that's such a powerful approach. And as producers, it's your job to make it happen. So Sinners was shot in large format IMAX and System 65, which are known for being some of the most visually immersive and formats out there. As a producer, what were some of the challenges and the rewards for using these advanced technologies to create such a visually immersive experience?
Well, I think the reward for using this medium is quite undeniable when you get to see it in IMAX and in theaters. And I hope everyone on this webinar gets to see it and experience it in its full, in the largest screen possible, in a packed theater with a crowd. And, that was the version of the movie that Ryan wanted to make and all of us wanted to make. It's immersive, it's entertaining. You get absolutely lost in the world and the characters and the emotions and the music. And it's just an undeniable format. It's just so enrapturing in that way. The challenges were many. We had very little time to put this movie together, and using this format because it is such a rare format requires a lot of preparation and a lot of time to really get things right. But we had a truly incredible crew. I think Sev and I and Zinzi and Ryan say this every chance we get. I don't know how we got so lucky with such a crew. Um, Led by our DP, Autumn Durald Arkapaw, who is the first woman to shoot on this format. So
Wow.
it's
Okay.
a real historical feat for us too. And I think, she put in the work to get everything prepped and her team put in the work to get everything prepped. And, these cameras are incredibly heavy. I think they're about 100 pounds and they're, very slow. They break down a lot. We had an incredible technician on set who was helping us fix problems as these cameras broke down. And a lot of nail biting moments as we were shooting, chasing sunlight, chasing sunsets, cameras not working or not malfunctioning. But, we had such an incredible crew who was ready to step up to the challenge. And I think our movie proves that.
Yes. And I definitely love that you're making cinematic history in that manner with having the first female to shoot on that format. I didn't know that. That's incredible. And so Ryan always knew he wanted to shoot in that format from the beginning, from the conception?
Actually, no. I think when we first conceived of the movie, it was 16 millimeter, and then it changed to 35 millimeter because we have twins in the movie. Michael B. Jordan plays twins, and turns out that requires some technical fidelity, and 35 millimeter was sort of the lowest barometer. And as we were prepping the movie, our studio partners at Warner Brothers asked a pretty innocent question about us considering large format in our process, and it hadn't even crossed our minds. And as soon as that question was posed to Ryan, I think it inspired him to look into shooting 65 and IMAX for film, and it sort of opened up the world of the movie in a real way. And we're really grateful to our partners at Warner Brothers and our partners at IMAX for being so supportive and helping us figure this out with very little turnaround and a very tight schedule for the movie. So
That's amazing. And that brings me into my next question. Sev, let's talk about Michael B. Jordan's incredible dual role in the film. So, as Rebecca mentioned, he's not only playing one character, but two twin brothers with contrasting personalities and emotional depth. This had to be a unique challenge for both Michael and the production team. How did you all ensure that both characters were fully developed and authentic?
Oh man, I mean, we go really back with Michael, right? So the first movie that I produced out of film school was, as you mentioned, Ryan Coogler's film Fruitvale Station, and we cast Michael to be the lead in that movie to play Oscar Grant. And I'll never forget, eating a hamburger and fries with Michael in Oakland as he was getting ready. And he was kind of nervous because it was his first time being what they say is like number one on the call sheet. Like being the star actor, there's a lot of responsibility with that. And he was nervous, but he was ready for the challenge. And then, fast forward a couple years later, what was funny is on the set of Fruitvale, Michael would often talk about wanting to direct, like all the way back then. And many, many years later, he got his opportunity to direct, which was a film called Creed 3 that we, at Proximity, we produced that with him. So it was really fun, again, to kind of be there for his first time. And, let's not make any mistakes. Michael is like a bona fide movie star, right? He's an unexceptional, like he's an exceptionally amazing actor, great guy, great leader. But now here he was doing a whole new challenge altogether. So to kind of help prepare him for this, as producers, we set him up with a couple things for success. One was Ryan is very good friends with a pair of real life twin brothers named Noah and Logan Miller, who are filmmakers themselves. And Ryan kind of got to know them. They're kind of from the same area in NorCal. We put Michael in touch with the two Miller brothers, and we kind of brought them on as consultants to really talk to Michael and to all of us about what is the nature of being a twin and really getting into the emotional aspect of that. Like they really share a lot of stories about like this is someone you share the womb with, and understanding like how if they get into a fight with someone, how does that look like? If they get into a fight with each other, what does that look like? And we also paired Michael with a great dialect coach named Beth McGuire, who's worked with Ryan and Michael on Black Panther. She does a lot of the Wakandan accents, for instance. She does that. And she really helped Michael develop a very distinct voice. So when you guys see the movie, Michael plays the Smokestack twins. One is named Smoke, one is named Stack. You'll see that they both kind of have their color schemes. Smoke wears blue, Stack wears red. Smoke is kind of quiet and kind of violent. Stack is very exuberant and very like friendly. So Michael helped develop these two different roles, perspectives for both roles. And on top of all of that, like Rebecca mentioned, we have to do a lot of VFX to make this stuff convincing. On some levels, this movie, which is a big budget event movie, the VFX was as simple as hiring a body double and just kind of shooting over his shoulder. We kind of, just like how we had to find all of our actors, we really had to look far and wide to find a good body double who can not only match Michael's height, build, complexion, but for so many scenes in this movie, Michael would be acting opposite this actor, and so so would our other actors. We needed somebody who can act, who can kind of hold their own in the scene, and we were really lucky to find a man named Percy Bell. And with all of these qualities and an amazing VFX team, we were hopefully able to set Michael up for success. And I will tell you guys, man, you will never make any mistake as to which twin Michael is playing. Take away the colors, take away the clothes. He brings an undeniable edge to both twins that even on set, you could just kind of tell who he was playing just from watching him walk from one end of the set to the other. But yeah, he killed it.
Yes, I second that. He definitely killed it. I was going to mention the color motif, so I'm glad you brought that up. That's so important to distinguish characters, and then we can see that it's a lot of thought and intentionality went into those characters. I also love how Michael always challenges himself in different roles, and this is, in my opinion, the ultimate being twins. So now, given the epic scope, as you mentioned, big budget film, how did you collaborate with the rest of the crew to maintain consistency in tone and vision throughout the film?
Yeah, I mean, it all goes back to Ryan. As the director, it's his lead vision that everyone's contributing to. And we were lucky, with the speed at which we had to make this movie, we knew we had to kind of call upon people that we trust. And of course, Michael being at the top of that list. Like there's no one who could have pulled this off like he could. When he came to the crew, we needed to go back to our regulars. So that was, Ruth doing costumes, Hannah doing production design, Ludwig doing our amazing soundtrack and score, Autumn who had shot Wakanda Forever with Ryan. Having the people who we've already been through the trenches with makes it that much easier because you develop a shorthand and there's a real implicit trust in doing all of this. Ryan was very clear about the tone we were going for. There was a number of movies that were always like our North Stars. That we're not trying to copy these films, but these are kind of like in the world that we're aiming for. And everyone was very much committed. I think it's rare to have a movie where so much can go wrong yet so right. And I think this movie is a great example of it. We had a lot of challenges on this film. We were shooting in New Orleans, in Louisiana, and When we got there, our local crew assured us that like, oh man, like it never rains at this point of time. I think we beat the Guinness World Record for how much it rained and had thunderstorms while
Murphy's Law, right?
exactly.
So
And you know that meant that, oh my God, guys, it's raining when we were supposed to shoot outside for 4 days. Hannah, is there anything that you could build as a last minute set that we can try? Maybe we'll shoot one corner of it now and we'll shoot later next time, you know, or Ruth, we're so sorry, our location lost, we lost our train location, so now we got to shoot that scene much earlier. How can we help you like have like 17 more costumes, you know, knit overnight? Things like that would happen all the time. Like Rebecca mentioned, these cameras are very large, and there's this incredible sequence right in the middle of the movie. I can't wait for you guys to see. I won't spoil it, but it's kind of an extended long oneer. You know what I'm talking about, Jami? Like that sequence was so intricate to pull off with music and VFX and stunts and dance choreography. And these cameras that roll out within 1 minute because the film is so large, you literally cannot fit more of it on a reel. Um, you know, they often say producing is like you're kind of like a firefighter, like all you do every day is like put out fires. And we were lucky to have a really good team of people who can help put out those fires with us.
Amazing. And I'm so glad you brought up just working with people that you've worked with in the past. Many of our attendees are film students, and I do mention how you went to USC. Shout out to USC. I do have some of my former students that are now in USC's grad school here with us. So can both of you, just talk a little more? About the evolution of your collaboration. We can start with Sev, since you did meet Ryan in film school. So you've worked together on these previous projects. How has the collaboration evolved over the years?
Oh man, Ryan, I mean, look, even back in film school, I felt like I knew Ryan was gonna be a standout generational talent. I just had that feeling. You know, you could even watching his short films. If you guys ever find any of these online, I think it's probably super educational just to watch. Um, and you know, we made Fruvel on a $6 budget, you know, in like 5 minutes of a shoot schedule, and he pulled it off. He killed it. He always approaches everything he does so intentionally, thoughtfully. I think Ryan personally, I think he's as a filmmaker, I feel he's seeking truth in what we're doing. You know, whether it's a fantastical, you know, futuristic society, or it's a man trying to get home to his daughter, or in this case, like a group of people trying to have fun one night and evil approaches. I feel he's always seeking truth. I think that authentic voice of his carries through in the films. And as his collaborator, I think he's so it's almost like he's a riddle to me because he's somebody who distinctively has a voice. He has his voice, he has his vision. He's like an auteur in that way, yet he's unbelievably collaborative. Like he pulls people in for their opinions. He, especially us as his producers, he would drag us to the mind and be like, "What do you think about this shot? Should I do X or Y or Z? Or what do you think?" Like he really seeks and wants to hear from people he trusts because he knows that filmmaking is a team sport at the end of the day. And
Absolutely.
you're only as good as the team that you built. And if you have a good team, you gotta put them to work.
Yes. Yeah. How about you, Rebecca? What were some of the new challenges or opportunities that you faced working together on Sinners?
Yeah, I think I have a pretty unique experience working with Ryan, Zeb, and Zinzi. I was actually their studio exec on the first two proximity movies, so Judas and the Black Messiah and Space Jam: A New Legacy were both movies we all worked on together, just on the other side of the aisle. And you know, I got to witness them as producers first and foremost. Of course, I knew of their work as filmmakers and creatives individually, but collaboratively. And the job of producing, I think we all have different metaphors for it, but the one that I like to say often is, and it's not mine, it's something that was told to me by a former boss when I was a young intern trying to make my way in the industry many, many years ago. Is that, the job of a producer is to build the best platform possible for the creatives and the artists so that they have the chance to spread their wings and build their rocket ship and launch it out into the world. And, I've always taken that message to heart. And, working with Ryan, Zinzi, and Sev as their studio exec when they were producing those movies, I saw the dedication they put in to those movies. Those movies were also incredible challenges, and we're so proud of them in many different ways. And I think then I came over to Proximity 3.5 years ago now and started working with them and building this company, building the slate on the film side and building this team and working in a different capacity. And then in the last 15 months, we've worked on Sinners together and as got to witness Ryan in his element as a filmmaker, as a writer, as a director, and a producer, and see him work with, Zinzi and Sev and, like Sev said, our collaborators who he's worked with over time. I think our editor, Michael, has edited all of his movies since film school. I think Hannah's production designed all of his movies since Fruitvale, and Ruth has been with him since Black Panther, and Autumn shot Panther 2. And it's incredible to witness his leadership as as a director and a filmmaker. Like Seth said, he has such a distinct voice, but he's able to sort of build followership in this giant crew. We're all working extremely long hours away from our families, away from our friends, extremely difficult conditions. We're working nights, we're working in incredible heat, incredible humidity, working through rain and lightning and mud and termite swarms. And that he's able, I mean, that's just the challenges of shooting in Louisiana sometimes. But
Right.
the way he's able to sort of inspire everyone to bring their best self despite the challenges and problem solve together. The secret of filmmaking is that, like Sev said, it's hundreds and hundreds of people working together and all rowing in the same direction, and it takes real conviction and vision and leadership to get people to do that. And it was wonderful getting to witness that and be a part of that, and be in service and building that platform so that Ryan could make Sinners.
Yeah. I believe the way you two have built a strong creative partnership with Ryan and Michael really does shine through in the film. So Rebecca, you mentioned the challenges of shooting in the South. So let's talk about the setting of Sinners. The rural southern town where the story takes place, to me, serves as a character in its own right, rich with culture and history. How did you both ensure that the setting played a key role in storytelling, and what were some of the creative decisions that help immerse the audience into this world?
Yeah, so the movie was always set in Clarksdale, Mississippi, and something that Ryan mentioned to us early on that I think none of us really knew, at least I didn't know, I haven't spent a ton of time in the South, is sort of the horizon of Clarksdale, Mississippi, and how flat it is, which is very different from, all of us are in California, in different parts of California, but we're in California where we have mountains and oceans and very different landscapes, and Ryan wanting to emphasize that horizon. And he and Ludwig went on a very early scouting trip, actually, from Memphis into Mississippi. And like we were getting pictures of that horizon and of that sort of kind of wideness of the landscape and the isolation of the landscape, but also the communities within it that were so special. And I think all of that is like very much infused into the movie, as you said, and the city and the town and the community feels like its own character. And I think this is where we have to shout out Hannah Beekler, who incredible production designer, I think also one of one in her field in so many ways. She found these locations that, we were in Louisiana shooting for Mississippi that felt like Mississippi, but it also felt magical and special and historically accurate. It's a combination of all of those things. The juke joint that she built, I think all the nooks and crannies of that juke joint that speak to the historical past of what it was, a lumber mill, and what it became in the story of our movie, which is this kind of magical space that this movie takes place in over the course of the night. That's all Hannah, and we were so lucky to have her on our team and find and build and use her creative energy to bring this world to life.
Do you have anything to add on to that?
No, that was beautifully said. I agree
It
with
really, it really was. And the town truly does feel magical, as you said, like a living, breathing character, adding so much atmosphere to the story. So Sev, I'll go to you for the next question then. One of the another standout aspects, there's so many, but another standout aspect is the use of blues music. And our director Ryan Coogler describes it as the music that experience inspires. So how does the music enhance the narrative, and what was your involvement in weaving it into the storytelling process?
Great question. It's funny about blues music, right? Like I can't think of any other type of music that is more connected to supernatural, right? Like there's all these legends about like blues players, like Rob, you hear about Robert Johnson and selling your soul to the devil. Like there's so much to that. And it's got such a rich history of like how blues music came to be and honestly, like group of Black Americans who created this culture that has become, as Ryan calls it, like literally America's #1 cultural export. And it's very much alive to this day. In popular music, you hear it, in grunge music, you hear it. Of course, even rap and hip hop, like there's elements of that there. So for Ryan, like this is a movie that is in a lot of ways about his own ancestry and tracing that lineage. The movie deals a lot with the past and future ancestors, descendants. It felt so right for it to be centered around blues music. And for my personal contribution, like we immersed ourselves, all of us, in the culture. We were listening to blues nonstop. We read a bunch of blues music biographies and books like that. And we worked very closely with Ludwig Göransson and Serena Göransson, who were our composer, fellow producers, and we put together a soundtrack for this film. The movie has many original musical moments in this film. It's not like a musical per se, but when you guys watch the film, you'll see what I'm talking about. And Jami, like we go hard with the music. There's major performances, and Ludwig is no stranger to making amazing music for Ryan's movies and our movies. But usually we shoot the movies first, and then Ludwig's got plenty of time in a studio with air conditioning to just start writing away, and then we can put the music, and he'll go win an Oscar. This time, he had to do all of that work before we shot the movie. We needed to have those songs written so our actors could learn them, perform them. Oh my God, that was insane. Like, what's crazy is we made Sinners, I feel like at a world record for how quickly you can make a movie of this size and scale. It was only like
Yeah.
half. But then in music world, like we'll be like, Lucas, yeah, I'm gonna go down to Memphis for a few days and work with some blues artists and maybe write some songs. And then I might text him and be like, "Hey, bro, did you arrive? Did you arrive to Memphis okay?" And I'm waiting for him to text me like, "Yeah, I just checked into the hotel." And he texts me back an MP3. And I'm like, "What is this?" He said, "Oh yeah, we just wrote the song." Like, what? Like it's insane how quickly, like
Yeah.
how differently that musical art form goes, but it also speaks to how brilliant Ludwig is and all the amazing musicians we worked with. Um, but yeah, it was kind of like while we were producing the movie, we constantly had to be listening to different tracks, giving our notes, and some songs were so nice, but they didn't quite fit the tone. Some
Mhm.
songs, the lyrics were exactly what we needed, but like tonally, rhythmically, they wouldn't work for the scene. It's a major part of putting this movie together.
Okay. And I'm sure that that helped tremendously on the acting side too, just being able to hear the music beforehand. That gets you in the mood.
Oh yeah. Oh
Yeah.
yeah. I've been blasting a soundtrack for the last 6 months, and all my friends hate me because I won't send it to them yet. But it
Oh,
comes out April 18th, so you guys can all get it soon.
yes. Yeah, so the music definitely adds an emotional layer to the film. Now, without giving away too much, let's talk a little more about the supernatural elements in the film. How do they challenge the characters, and what role do they play in the broader narrative beyond just the horror aspect? So, I love horror, so I feel like I don't get scared easily, but I was it was haunting. There were moments where I jumped up in my seat, but that's also different than the supernatural elements. So, can you talk about that, those elements?
Yeah, I can jump in. Look, at the end of the day, the movie's a fun, event-driven genre film. It's Ryan's first time ever doing a genre film, like something that feels like a horror film. And the supernatural threats in this film are, I'm sure you guys have seen the trailers. You guys kind of sense of what they are. Ryan's always had a fascination with them, and we have a unique approach to them in this film. I think we kind of borrow a lot from the lore of what those enemies are, and we expand upon them in really cool ways. I think thematically, I'll let people watch the movie and make their own impressions of what the film is about. But I think there's an element about this film that's about freedom and seeking freedom and what that looks like for different people. And I think these supernatural entities that we're playing with represent that in a really cool way.
Um, Totally agree with Sev. I think just to give credit to the vampire lore, Sev really kept us accountable on the lore of the supernatural elements. And I think we've talked about a lot in the making of this movie that it's lore that everyone's familiar with. So where do we add our own twist? Where does Ryan add his own twist? How do we show that to the audience? How do we play with that expectation, which I think once you see the movie, you'll really see. I also wanted to say there's other supernatural elements. Our wonderful actress Wunmi Mosaku plays Annie, who is a hoodoo priestess, and we took a lot of care to make sure that that religion and that practice is represented accurately, and done justified in the movie. And I think you'll see in the movie, and I think it's in the trailer too, just how that element sort of weaves into the story, and it's you know quite beautiful and quite historically accurate as well, and accurate to current practitioners of hoodoo. We've worked with, I think, potentially over 15 consultants on this movie, to make sure every single element of the movie was well researched, accurate, that despite it being a fun ride of a movie, that if you go back and watch it again and again and again, there's going to be new pieces that you will find and, be able to research, and hopefully new layers that you'll be able to uncover. And, I think just to go back to the blues music of it all, like music itself is a supernatural experience. And I think it is a unifying experience. And I think the way music plays into our movie feels kind of magical and supernatural in that way too.
Yes, thank you for sharing that because the research definitely lends itself towards authenticity, and we teach our students that they must research the stories that they're telling and the cultures that they're sharing. So, okay. So at this time, we're going to move to the chat. We have tons of questions.
Oh man, I've been answering them this
Yeah.
whole time. My bad.
Oh, you have? Way to multitask. Um, let's
That's multitasker, I know.
right. Producers, right? That's what we're doing. Okay, so I will take, there's so many. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm going to start with one of my students, Jay Naji, a former student, MFA at Howard film grad. When it comes to cultivating funding for your film, both as a producer and independent filmmaker, do you have advice for taking big steps towards finding and collecting it?
Yeah, I can speak to this. I had a whole life as an independent film producer before the last couple of years, and there's a couple things I think to finding money. I think one is a philosophical thing. I think it's really hard to go and find money for projects. I think that's really hard. I think we all know that. Philosophically, what helped me quite a bit is actually not making the action to go find money, but rather making the action to make projects that will attract money. So like it's not about trying to go knock down doors and get in touch with networking, but it's like you do really good stuff. People will hear about you and will want to come work with you, whether it's making short films or submitting to competitions and winning accolades, things like that. Secondly, it's to mentally think about it less of trying to get people's goodwill and trying to get people to want to invest in you, and like try to ignore the fact, like don't think of it as like getting people to believe in you. Think of it as your job is to let people make more money. How can they make more money with their money? Like having opportunities that you bring to them that have to feel undeniable. Well, if they happen to have a spare $100,000 lying around, they want to invest in your independent film, it's a no-brainer. This thing is so commercial, it reads so well. It's just like these five other movies that did really well. You've already got all the cast in mind, or you got your locations, you got your schedule. You want to come across like a already moving train that they need to just want to get on board, and they'd be crazy not to. I think FOMO is a major factor of trying to get any kind of financing, even with Sinners. Like when we take this project out, the reason we were able to get the deal we got and the budget we were able to accumulate is everyone was like, well, if we don't pay for that, someone else will. Now, obviously, it's Ryan Coogler, Michael B. Jordan, it's a bigger deal, but you can still scale that all the way down and find the same type of support for projects of yours. Hopefully, that's helpful just as an overall mental way to look into financing.
Thank
I
you
can
for
speak for it from a studio executive perspective. So I had a whole different life before Proximity on a completely other side than Sev, which is, I worked on big budget movies as a studio executive. I was the one hearing these pitches, deciding what to buy, working with my bosses to kind of shape the landscape of these like major productions at studios. And, when it comes down to it, as Sev said, a lot of it is um, your reputation. It's one of the only things you have in this industry, and making sure people want to work with you, that you are, not that you're a doormat, but you are someone who's collaborative and willing to work with your partners, listen to them, even if you don't disagree with them, that you listen to them. And when you do disagree with them, you're able to have a conversation explaining your point of view and find that happy medium. That doesn't compromise your vision as a filmmaker. So, that's a big part of it. I think, as Seth said, like selling your movie, like it is about walking into the room and saying, hey, this is something that I believe in. This is my vision. No one else can make this except me. And this is why you should invest. And, this is who the movie is for. That's the last piece, is like really thinking about the audience. At the end of the day, I think what's so great about Ryan as a filmmaker is that he's always, always, always concerned about the audience experience. I think he says this a lot, which is that he's been a fan of movies longer than he's been making movies, which I think is such a profound thing to say, even though it's a very obvious thing when you think about all of us, right? Like we all watched movies long before we ever started making movies. And I think we should never forget that as filmmakers and as producers, as executives. It's at the end of the day, we're all audience members, and we want to make movies that entertain people, that make challenge people, that make people think, that stay with people. Again, this is not my line. I'm stealing from one of my old bosses, but at the end of the day, I hope that we may not be able to make everyone's favorite movie, but I hope we're making somebody's favorite movie. And I think never forgetting that you're making movies for other people to watch and enjoy and experience together is really important.
Thank you for that. So the next is a comment and question, and I agree with the comment. I love the Proximity podcast. Rebecca, I've heard you on it. I haven't been this excited to see a film in so long. Good. You should be excited. Is this rollout also a big part of your roles as producers? And that's from Anne. So the podcasts.
Yeah. We work very closely with Paula Marta, who is our head of audio, in the way that Rebecca is the head of film for our company. Paula does the same for our podcast. And we actually today dropped the first of a three-part series about Sinners, where you're going to hear legit, exclusive, incredible information from Ryan paired with Autumn, our cinematographer. So definitely check that out. And yeah, I mean, Ryan, Zizzy, and I, we oversee the company, so we're often working closely with Paula, getting ready for questions and who we want to hire as a guest, and how do we, like edit the podcast, how do we produce the podcast, how do we get it out there? It's all very similar. And we've been able to kind of our podcast is called In Proximity, and a lot of it is basically members of our company. Like Rebecca, for example, has an amazing episode with a couple of people, but one that I think of is with Courtney Valenti, who's a big executive at Amazon right now. So like hearing Rebecca talk to Courtney about like their previous relationship, and it's an insight into the industry, but it's about the creative process. And I think the partnership with Sinners in particular is really cool, because you are gonna see no shortage of our cast and Ryan doing interviews and talk shows. But what you will learn on the podcast is exclusive and really, really special to that audience.
It is. Thank you for that. Another question, how do you produce effectively without disrupting and uprooting the surrounding community, especially, well, I'm going to leave it there. That was the question. Especially you all shooting in a southern rural town. I think that's a great question, since you just did that with Sinners.
Love this question.
Mhm.
I'll give a brief answer, but Rebecca obviously should jump in. That is so, well, at Proximity, we so care about these kinds of questions, and we try and be extremely thoughtful on so many levels. I think Rebecca mentioned Warner Brothers Legal was like, we've never in 100 years of making movies had this many consultants on a project because we were like, more for me, and our movie portrays the Mississippi Choctaw. We're like, well, we got to make sure we get a cultural representative from that community to tell us how we're doing it. We have somebody who could really speak to us about the hoodoo culture, somebody who could speak to us about Mississippi Delta Chinese Americans and things of that nature. Fortunately for us, where we shot this film, the only underrepresented communities were alligators. And we were basically shooting in very much swampland in Louisiana, so we didn't have to worry too much about that particular question. But I will say it's part of our company's ethos to always be mindful of that stuff.
Yeah, and I will just say, like, again, we had an incredible crew, incredible location scouts, incredible production designers who were very familiar with New Orleans and Louisiana. They were native to New Orleans and Louisiana, knew the people, made sure that they were, you know, warned ahead of time, like everything was agreed upon, sort of, all these plans. So we made sure we never disrupted communities. And as we were shooting, we were very much mindful of that. And as Sev said, the only people we can't negotiate with are alligators and snakes, which they were plentiful. And the other thing is we, of course, like shot on historical buildings and historical locations, and we were incredibly respectful of our crew too, and like sort of the feelings and different emotions being in these spaces and places will evoke. And we had an incredible um, therapist and consultant on crew who was there to help people work through any emotions that might be triggered from being on these sets and locations that have like a lot of historical significance and trauma related to them. And as Sev said, it's like part of our company ethos to like take care of each other and take care of everyone on our crews. And that's something we take quite seriously on every single level. As Steph said, like I think Warner Brothers was a little like, man, you care about this, and we're like, yes, we care about every single detail. So that's just who we are.
And sticking to your mission, that's fantastic. I think this is a great follow-up question. What are your wellness routines as producers? And this is from a Howard alum and Columbia University MFA alum, Jada Buford.
Oh man, I love that question. That's tricky. I don't know if that I have a personal wellness routine. I think, balance is always tricky in an industry that's creative and moving very fast. And, I think part of filmmaking is that there are moments where things are really, really busy and really, really crazy. And then there are moments that will be slower. And it is sort of finding your balance within all of it. It's no secret that the film industry has gone through many peaks and valleys over the very recent history, but also across the entire history of the industry. And I think it's just finding balance, finding a way to, keep yourself grounded in the highs and in the lows. Your friends, your family, sleep, important. We didn't get a lot of it in New Orleans, but turns out it's really important. Eating well, exercising, all of those things. So it's we have a really good team at this company that like keep each other accountable for taking breaks and taking care of ourselves and making sure we can be there for our families and friends and not just be working, all hours of the day. So we keep each other accountable for that.
That's great. I would imagine just the long hours are for production, but perhaps in pre-production you have a little more time for yourself. A little more.
Maybe one would hope. It doesn't always work out that way.
Sev, you want to wellness routine?
Yes, I will say, I mean, just to add to Rebecca, it is helpful when the project you're working on that is the source of all of your unwellness because of the stakes and the stress and all that. If the project is a meaningful one like Sinners is, that you're all this energy and stress is going towards something that's gonna mean something, it helps too, on top of all of the steps you can take to do right by yourself. But having that end goal of like, man, this project can actually, impact people and kind of expose an element of like at our proximity, our mission is to make event-driven movies that are about often overlooked subjects. To bring people in close proximity to those things, that helps.
Okay. Okay, from an anonymous attendee, thank you for pushing original ideas in cinema. With so much focus on existing IP, how can we better support fresh original stories today? And Sinners is an original story. So what can we do to support those?
I
Go to
think
the movies, watch original movies. You know, I think that's number one. We need to make sure audiences are going to theaters to watch these original movies. There's so many incredible filmmakers working, making original movies at all different budget levels. I think ultimately that's it, right? Making sure these connect with audiences and become IP of their own eventually. So, um, that's my answer. Let's go to the movies.
it's that simple.
Okay. How do producers effectively budget in each phase of a project? And we can talk about just Sinners, pre-production, production, and post.
Yeah, I think Rebecca and I qualify as like creative producers, and you want to work with a really good line producer, somebody whose job it is to schedule, budget, run the production side of it. We had a great guy named William Greenfield who did our movie with us, and we called him Christmas Eve, asked him to put a budget together. He had it for us New Year's Eve. It was insane. And a lot of it is built on like pre-existing knowledge, like knowing a movie of about this size. They kind of, put placeholders for like how much your costume budget should be. Oh, it's a period movie. Let's bump that up. Or there's a lot of blood in this movie, bump it up even more. Like things like that come from pre-existing experience. And then, when you're making movies at a certain budget size, it's a union film. And a lot of those rates for different crew members, it's a lot of that's kind of pre-negotiated in a major way with the unions. So you kind of plug all that in. And the problem that we found on this movie that I think affects 100% of movies is we realized we did not have enough money. It's every
Oh,
movie will have that problem, whether it's a low budget film, student film. I
absolutely.
imagine Black Panther 5 is going to have that problem. Then that's when you come in as a creative producer. We start looking at the script and like, man, what can we, cut entirely and have the movie still work? I mean, every time I've ever had this experience, we always go like, we can't cut anything. Everything is too precious. And then 7 months later, we're in the edit. We're like, why did we shoot this? Just cut that thing. Like the trick is knowing what to cut before you shot it to save that money. So, again, that experience of having done this number of times and working with a director like Ryan, who's so producerial, like oriented in his head, I'm really proud of a lot of the fixes we came up with, like finding ways to shoot scenes that still deliver on what the audience is wanting, but that just for a fraction of the money. And a lot of it is being creative. Like I said, there's scenes in this movie that we've used incredible state-of-the-art VFX to sell you on the fact that there's two Michael B. Jordans. And then there's scenes where you're just shooting over the shoulder of a guy who kind of looks like Mike, and it still gets the job done.
And just to
Yeah. Sorry, go
go
ahead.
ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I think as creative producers, this movie was turned around really quickly, but we read a lot of scripts, a lot of drafts of all of our scripts. We work on them very closely, and it sort of comes with experience, but it's also a lot of the movie business is the math of the movie business. A lot of it is done through comping. So it's looking at comparisons of other movies that are similar in genre, similar in size and scope and ambition, and sort of looking at those budgets, looking at those box office numbers, and sort of finding like, hey, this movie sort of lives in this number and target and space. Let's make sure we're developing it to fit into this target. And then something can happen like us, changing our format and shooting 65 in IMAX, and that opens the budget and sort of the movie wide open, and we have to sort of rethink that and rethink that comps and rethink how we approach the budgeting and approach the scheduling and approach all of these things. So, remaining flexible and nimble, but like pulling from knowledge and doing your research and watching those movies so that you can speak to the comping and speak to the numbers of it, right? Like what movies were shot for 35, what movies were shot for 65, and what are the differences that you notice as a consumer of that movie, and then when you're approaching your movie to make your own movie, like what are the things you're looking for and what are the things you're trying to preserve and that you want to fight for with the limited budget that you have. So that's something, just a skill to start developing and working on.
Yeah, I was just going to comment that that's one of the hardest parts of being a producer is making those tough decisions, approaching the director to say, "Hey, we have to cut this." I wanted to know how receptive was Ryan to those requests, if you will.
I will say Ryan is a great filmmaker in that he will be receptive if that's what we have to do, but he will ask for every iota of detail. You know,
Mm,
like, hey, if we got to cut, hey, like, we would never do this because it's not our style, but if we were like, hey, man, you got to cut, hey, you got to shoot that action sequence in 3 days, not five. He would be like, okay, but like, why, like what are those 2 days going towards, what's our shot list for those 2 days versus the 5 days, like, and it's really your job is when you're going to your filmmaking partners to really like back it up with like you've done the work, you're not just kind of parroting what you may have heard someone else say. It's really like, like Ryan holds up his end of the bargain. He preps the hell out of these movies and rehearses and shot lists and comes in prepared and all of those things. So it's like your job as a producing partner to your director, whoever your directing partner is, whether it's Ryan or someone else, is to do the same. When if you have asks that you need your filmmaker to do, like you go in prepared, you've thought everything through. We often talk about things like like lunch menus. Like rather than telling the director, hey, we have to cut XYZ because we got to save $1 million, you would be like, hey, here's a lunch menu of all the 20 things that if we cut five of them each, we can save $1 million. Do you want to
mm.
reduce some extras that day? Do you want to maybe have shoot that scene in less days? So now you have to make it work better. Do you want to maybe cut these two characters and give their roles to these other characters? And those examples are all things we did on this movie. We cut extras, we cut characters, like we had to do those things to make the movie work. But that's every movie, you know?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Mhm.
There's compromises made in the creative process, and as Sev said, it's about sort of figuring out what compromises you can live with, and what, frankly, sometimes those compromises can make the movie better. Fitting into the box can help you come up with more creative solutions for the same kind of impact and story. So, being open to that and being adaptable to that, and I think, as I've mentioned, Ryan is incredibly open and adaptable and nimble and flexible without compromising his vision. And I think as producers, both on this movie and just all of our movies, is to support that process with our filmmakers.
I think we have time for just a couple more questions. Stevie Rain Warren has is thanking you for your time and insight. It's been lovely. What were the determining factors that brought this project to Louisiana? So we know it's set in Mississippi, but why Louisiana? And and this person's put so sorry about the mosquito bites. Yeah.
Mosquito bites we could live with. There were other bugs that were definitely harder. Um, I can begin. I think we ended up in Louisiana because it was the best place to shoot the movie. We loved the crew there. We loved the resources that Louisiana provided. The landscape that Louisiana provided was what we needed for, Clarksdale, Mississippi. We looked at a lot of different places, a lot of different options, and we sent scouts everywhere, and we were sort of looking at so many pictures online and trying to make sure that they fit the vision that Ryan was trying to create. And ultimately, Louisiana provided us with all of that optionality. We were on stages, we were in Napoleonville, we were in St. Bernard Parish, we were in so many different places that kind of, I think you see it in the movie once you see it, sort of the variety of location and sort of world building that we could achieve. So
And this is a good question to end with for both of you. What was the most valuable lesson that you learned from making this movie, Sinners?
Mm. Man, I wish I could answer this a month from now when it's truly over. But man, can I get away with a cheesy answer? Is that okay?
I guess we'll allow that. Yeah.
I mean this sincerely, like that I think man, I may have said this already, but like when we were putting the movie together, at one point somebody said to Ryan, "Hey, this is impossible. Like the timeline that we're aiming for, it's not like difficult. It's actually impossible. Like it physically like the rules of the universe, like there's no way all these things can happen at the right time. And Ryan kind of said, I'm not disagreeing with you that it's impossible. Let's just pretend it's possible and see how far we can get. And I'll say that up until now, we've gone this far. We're almost done. But to me, my cheesy lesson is like, man, like you can do a lot more than you probably think you can. If you have the right team, the right end mission, the right energy and spirit inside of you. That to me is the lesson I've taken away from this. If we pull this off, which I think we have, and I'm really proud of the movie, can't wait for you guys to see it, that you really can achieve what initially might seem literally beyond the realm of possibility.
Good one. I think I might have been the one to say it might be impossible.
I was going to say, producers, how did you feel?
That might have been a conversation that Lindsay and I had, and then went to Rye. No, I think, that's a great lesson to sort of know that we're possible of doing a lot more than we think we are. I think the lesson for me is like honestly believing in the thing that you're making and enjoying working with the people you're working with. It's so hard to make a movie, which I'm sure everyone on this Zoom knows and feels. Every movie, having been in this industry for, over a decade, every movie to me still feels like a miracle. I can't believe we pulled it off every single time. And it's so, so important that because you're going to be in the trenches with the team making that movie, that you know, respect each other, trust each other, and are able to, enjoy working together because it's so hard. It's so hard beyond that. And I think we were incredibly lucky to have this team, our core team, our crew, our team at Warner Brothers, and beyond to pull together and rally around this movie. And I too am very proud of this movie and feels like a magic trick we pulled off and a miracle that we got here. But just so excited for the movie to be out in 10 days.
Me too. It truly is a brilliant masterpiece. So thank you so much, Rebecca and Sev, for joining us today and sharing your incredible insights into the making of Sinners. It's so clear that this film has been a labor of love, and we can't wait for everyone to experience it. It is truly a cinematic experience, and what I mean by that is you must experience it on the big screen. I plan to watch it over and over again, and continue to discover new things about the film. To our audience, thank you so much for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed this conversation as much as we have. Be sure to check out Sinners in theaters April 18th. I promise you won't want to miss it. Until next time, take care, and we'll see you at the movies, April 18th.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, guys.
Sinners.